Welcome to the program from Townhall, riding in the hill. Katie Pavlich. Katie, how are you?
Good morning. Actually, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
One of those weeks.
Well,
what time it is.
You could be on Arizona time. It'd still be morning out there.
That's true. It's morning somewhere.
You're an Arizona girl at heart, I think, right?
I am. Yes, very much so. I was just actually thinking about that today as I was walking down the sidewalk in the rain, and I will never learn ever, no matter how long I live on the East Coast, to bring an umbrella with me. Good for the soul.
Exactly. And you're not made of
humbling experience.
You're not made of sugar. I understand. Being a bald guy, I have no hair to really worry about. So it's been a long time since I've had to worry about my hair getting wet. But you got to remember that you're not in the desert anymore.
I know. I was reminded today.
No, D.C. is a very, very different place.
It is.
And as a matter of fact, as you write in the Hill, this is a place right now where the progressive establishment, including the president and his allies, are claiming that the NRA is arming terrorists.
Right.
And so we need to have this legislation, which has been around for 10 years. Got to pass it so that if you are on a watch list, you no longer can purchase firearms. And this is going to keep us safe.
Right. So, in the wake of Paris and in the wake of President Obama's failed policy on ISIS and in the wake of the administration refusing to back down on their efforts to bring Syrian refugees to the country, despite knowing that, quote, refugees were posing as refugees and carried out these Paris attacks. So Americans legitimately have some concerns about the vetting process, considering Homeland Security and the FBI have said they don't have a proper vetting process for these people. To distract away from all of those things, the president and the administration are, of course, bringing out their favorite enemy and their regular strawman, which, of course, is the NRA. And you have White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest last week talking about how the legislation you just talked about needs to be passed because the NRA is interested in making sure that terrorists have the ability to purchase firearms, which we both know is not true. We know that this list that they talk about, this terrorist watch list, there's something like 700,000 names on it. It's gone from 47,000 names under George W. Bush to 700,000 under Barack Obama. And the majority of the names on it, or at least, a significant portion of them, have nothing to do with individuals tied to terrorism at all. And it's basically a guilty until proven innocent process. And yet, here we are with the administration blaming the NRA for wanting to protect the rights and civil liberties of Americans. It really is incredible.
It is incredible. I will say this, Katie. I've been somewhat encouraged by the response that I've seen. Like, this idea has clearly not caught fire.
Right.
I've actually seen some op-eds. I think there was one in Florida or today or yesterday on why this was a bad idea. This was from the Daytona Beach News Journal. Watchlist, a flimsy way to deny rights. People do seem to get it. They understand. And it doesn't mean that you're soft on terrorism. It doesn't mean that you want terrorists to have guns. But it does mean that you don't want people to lose their constitutional rights because a bureaucrat put them on a list.
Well, and I think that people overall, on both sides of the political aisle, understand that the government deciding that you are somehow a terrorist, no matter what, is a bad thing, right? And I think this is a reason a lot of the time, too, people get a little bit squeamish around, mental health reforms in this country because they don't want the government deciding who is and who is not mentally ill, right? I mean, that's a scary thing to think about, the government putting you on some list and deciding that you're the problem. And there's actually a piece that ran in the Huffington Post about, 7 ways that you yourself, even though you're a regular American citizen with no ties to terrorism, could end up on this list. I mean, Steve Hayes from the Weekly Standard ended up on the no-fly list because he went to Greece with his wife.
Right.
I mean, this is how this happens. But the other thing that I wrote about in the Hill that I thought was really important to point out is that while the administration is blaming the NRA for somehow wanting to sell guns to terrorists, they forget that they actually sold thousands of firearms to narco terrorists on the southern border, who actually ISIS could learn a few things from, in my opinion. I mean, Mexican cartels, they put people alive into acid baths and dissolve their bodies. They regularly behead people and drop them off at places like schools and media outlets and police departments as a warning not to go against what they're doing or to talk to the authorities about what they're doing. They regularly torture people. They regularly dismember bodies. And of course, as we know, as we've covered extensively for years, as a result of the Fast and Furious program, hundreds of people, if not thousands, in Mexico have been killed. So while the administration wants to blame the NRA for something they are not doing, they, of course, don't mention the fact that they themselves actually sold thousands of guns to narco terrorists who are horrible, horrible human beings who do some awful and gruesome things just right next door as our neighbors. So, I think we should remind everyone, especially since there's been so many scandals, that this was a big one, and they shouldn't get away with blaming the NRA for doing something when they did precisely exactly what they're accusing the NRA of doing.
Listen, I'm right with you. Now, of course, you know what they'd say. They'd say, well, Katie, listen, mistakes were made, but it was all about the greater good, right? That's so you have to forgive us our mistakes. Meanwhile, they don't see our right to keep and bear arms as a greater good.
Right. No, it's amazing. It really is amazing that in the wake of, the worst terror attack in France, which, by the way, is one big gun-free zone, you have the administration advocating for the disarmament of a civilian population, putting them in an even more vulnerable situation than they already are in.
The president himself today was in Paris and said, "We're the United States. This is the only nation where stuff like this happens."
Right. He's standing in the same city where a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, 130 people were slaughtered. And by the way, Cam, did you know that grenades are also banned in France and suicide belts too? So maybe we should, implement some suicide belt control here in the United States, and all will be well. The NRA should stop promoting suicide belts for terrorists.
I don't even at this point, Katie. I mean, honestly, this is where the political discourse is right now, and it is so far removed, right, from reality.
Well, it is amazing. They are constantly warning us. The FBI, Homeland Security, the White House are constantly warning us to be on the lookout for lone wolf attacks, right? But when it comes to actually allowing people the means to protect themselves in a way that it's not flowers protecting you, it's a real way of protecting yourself, they want to take it away, which makes them negligent, by the way. So they think that they're doing us all a big service by telling us what's going on and to be careful, and yet they are completely opposed to the means by which, if something were to occur, or when it does occur, they don't want you to have access to what would give you the ability to try and survive.
Absolutely. I mean, go back to the comments by Chief Lanier in Washington, D.C. On 60 Minutes that, if you're faced with a situation like this, run away if you can, hide if you can. If you can't, fight back, take them down. But don't.
Spitball?
Well, yeah, maybe like a mug of some kind or a shoe or something, but not a gun.
Or throw up on them. I've heard that's a good tactic, too.
Yeah.
Just throw up on them.
Blind them with your vomit, perhaps. Right. I mean, that's the thing. But this is, again, that disconnect between the rhetoric and the reality here. Listen, I agree. Run away if you can. Hide if you can. But if you're telling me that my last option here is to fight back, then I want to be able to fight back the most effective way possible.
On an even footing. I mean, do they really believe that you should be, not on even footing with someone who walks into a cafe with an AK-47? I'm not saying that people are going to walk around with AK-47s, but you get the point. I mean, do they really think that they should be advocating for people to have a lesser firepower than the people who they're saying who they should be taking down? I mean, I don't even think that it's just a disconnect with rhetoric. and logic, I think that it's negligent. I think that they like to say these things to prove that they are doing their job and warning the public about what to do. But then when it really comes down to reality and having options to carry out what they're advocating for us to do, they won't allow it because they're more interested in control and a political agenda than they are about really protecting the public and allowing the public to protect themselves. When the worst case scenario happens, they're never around. And I was seeing, too, that someone else pointed this out, that, whenever there's a mass shooting in one of these gun-free zones, for example, when people don't have the ability to defend themselves or at least have some kind of chance at survival, all the lawsuits that are filed by these family members over the gun-free zone get dropped. And the people who implemented those policies are no longer responsible for anything, right? So they're not responsible for anything, even though that they say they're interested in keeping you safe. They're really not, and I think it's negligent.
Katie Pavlich, again, we always appreciate you coming on the program. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving.
I did. I hope you did, too, out on the farm.
Well, it's hard not to have a good Thanksgiving. Bring the dog and come see us again soon.
I will. We'll be down.
All right, we'll talk to you soon. Katie Pavlich with us here on NRA News, Cam and Company.